So, remember when everybody said we were overreacting, that we were making stuff up, being dramatic, reading too much into it? Yeah, now would be the perfect time to apologize, because it turns out we were right all along. Sophie Cunningham, yes, that's Sophie Cunningham, just confirmed what fans, analysts, and even independent creators have been whispering for months. Unrivaled is a conflict of interest. And she didn't say it in passing, she said it clearly, on her own podcast, out loud, in front of the world. Let's break this down properly because what Sophie just admitted has massive implications for the WNBA, for the Players Association, and for the future of women's basketball as a whole. It all started months ago when fans began raising eyebrows at the dual roles of Napheesa Collier and Breanna Stewart. On one hand, they're respected WNBA superstars. On the other, they're the co-founders and co-owners of Unrivaled, a new 3-versus-3 and 1-versus-1 women's basketball league designed to give players stateside opportunities in the WNBA offseason. On paper, that sounds incredible. Players staying home, making more money, staying visible, and growing their brand. Everyone wins, right? Well, not exactly, because there's one big flashing red flag. Both Collier and Stewart also hold positions on the WNBPA executive board, the same board responsible for negotiating the league's collective bargaining agreement with the WNBA. That means while they're sitting at the table, representing the players in negotiations, they also own a competing league that could directly benefit from decisions that hurt the WNBA's bargaining power. That's the textbook definition of a conflict of interest. For months, fans and independent media have been saying it. They pointed out how awkward it looked for Collier and Stewart to be championing a new private basketball league while simultaneously being part of the group tasked with protecting the integrity and future of the WNBA. And every time that criticism came up, people brushed it off. They're just innovators. They're doing something positive for the women's game. Stop hating on female athletes trying to grow the sport. But here's the truth. Supporting women's basketball and holding people accountable are not mutually exclusive. You can love what Collier and Stewart have accomplished as athletes and still recognize that being both WNBPA board members and Unrivaled founders is a serious ethical problem. And now Sophie Cunningham just said what everyone else was too afraid to admit publicly. During her podcast appearance, Sophie was asked about Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 and 1-on-1 league that's been getting major attention since its debut. She starts out complimenting the players, calling Collier and Stewart phenomenal and great people, but then she lets it slip. Sophie says they're also a part of our exec board, and so that could be a little conflict of interest. Boom, there it is, straight from an active WNBA player's mouth. Now, that one sentence might not sound explosive at first, but when you unpack what it means, it's massive, because up until now, no player had dared to publicly acknowledge what fans already suspected. There's a level of unspoken pressure in the WNBA community not to challenge star players or the union leadership. Everyone knows each other, everyone works together, so for Sophie Cunningham to even hint at a conflict of interest, that's bold. And let's not forget the timing here. The WNBA and the Players Association are entering another critical phase of CBA negotiations. These negotiations will shape the next several years of player salaries, travel accommodations, free agency rules, and more. Meanwhile, Unrivaled is gearing up for its 2026 season, set to tip off on January 5th in Miami, with games streaming on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. That means, while WNBA executives and players are battling it out at the negotiating table, two of the key figures representing the players are also running a rival basketball league that could directly benefit from how those negotiations go. If the WNBA's offseason or pay structure remains limited, guess what? Players will flock to Unrivaled. If the WNBA has another lockout, even better for Unrivaled, they'll have a monopoly on the talent and the audience. So, it's not a conspiracy theory, it's not fan drama, it's real politics. Now, Sophie didn't stop there. When talking about Unrivaled's format, she casually mentions it runs for 9 weeks. That's not just a fun off-season event, that's a full-blown league schedule. 9 weeks of gameplay means 9 weeks where players are tied up in another commitment that overlaps with training, rest, or WNBA obligations. Sophie even says, that's why there's some conflict of interest a little bit. Again, she said it herself. A little bit. She tried to soften it, but the truth was already out. Even players inside the league are noticing that things don't add up. And what's wild is that you can actually hear the hesitation in Sophie's tone. It's that moment where she's trying to be diplomatic, trying not to start drama, but she knows what she's saying is the truth. That's why her comment hit so hard, because she wasn't trying to expose anyone, she just, accidentally, told the truth. Now, let's be real. Sophie Cunningham has always been one of the more outspoken and authentic personalities in the WNBA. She doesn't sugarcoat her opinions. Whether you like her or not, she says what's on her mind, and that's exactly why her words carry weight here. Because if someone like Sophie, who's still active, still in the locker room, still part of the league, says out loud that something looks like a conflict of interest, it means a lot of other players are probably thinking the same thing behind the scenes. This isn't about tearing down Collier or Stewart. This is about transparency. When you hold power in two competing spaces, you owe it to everyone, players, fans, executives, to be honest about where your loyalties lie. Let's also connect the dots here with Nneka Ogwumike, the former WNBA president. She just signed with Project B, another new basketball league rumored to be backed by serious money, potentially even Saudi investment, and is reportedly offering players multi-million-dollar contracts and equity stakes. Think about that. The former president of the WNBA, now holding ownership in a rival league, right after leading negotiations with the WNBA. That's not just ironic, it's potentially destabilizing. You now have multiple top players, all with union influence, financially invested, in leagues that directly compete with the WNBA's calendar and business model. So, if you're sitting in the WNBA's front office, how can you trust the process? How can you negotiate in good faith when the people across the table have every reason to want your product to lose leverage? That's what makes Sophie Cunningham's comments so powerful. She didn't just call out an ethical question, she exposed the deeper cracks forming in the foundation of women's basketball governance. And let's not ignore what this means for the fans. Fans have been incredibly supportive of women's basketball growth. They want to see expansion, fair pay, and new platforms for players. But they also want honesty. They want to know that when players advocate for league changes, it's genuinely for the collective good, not to strengthen their own private ventures. When you mix business with representation, lines get blurred fast, and if fans lose trust in that representation, it hurts everyone. The WNBA, Unrivaled, Project B, and even the players who are just trying to earn a living. That's why this moment matters, because for the first time, someone on the inside said what everyone else wouldn't. Now, let's not pretend this story ends here. Unrivaled is set for a huge 2026 season with major names like Paige Bueckers, Cameron Brink, Napheesa Collier, and Breanna Stewart locked in. They've got TV deals, sponsorships, and serious momentum. The product looks great, but so did a lot of projects before internal politics tore them apart. If Unrivaled wants to succeed long-term, they'll need to address this perception issue fast. That means Collier and Stewart should consider stepping back from the WNBA executive board, or at least publicly clarifying how they separate their responsibilities. Because if this conflict isn't handled, it could spark a major credibility crisis for both the union and the league. And honestly, Sophie Cunningham might have just lit the fuse. So, what happens next? Well, expect more players to speak out, Expect more journalists to start asking questions during those pressers. And hey, don't be surprised if the WNBA faces pressure to tighten its ethics rules. This conversation isn't going away. It's only getting louder, folks. At the end of the day, Sophie didn't attack anyone. She just told the truth, and the truth hit like a thunderclap. For months, people downplayed this as gossip or fan paranoia. But now, a current WNBA player said it straight, it's a conflict of interest. Fans were right, critics were right, and Sophie just proved it. So, what do you think? Is Unrivaled an inspiring new chapter for women's basketball, or a dangerous conflict of interest that could divide the sport? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like, share and subscribe if you want more real discussions just like this one. This is Keep the Vision, and remember, the truth always finds its way out.